What I'm going to show you how to do here is cut a notch or an offset corner. This is a simple version. I'm not going to actually show you this one, but the same principles are the same. This is putting just a little notch into the corner. This is what I'm going to demonstrate, which is an offset corner, where basically we've just moved the corner in on a little step. I tend not to use this for general artwork, but I find it's very good for certificates, diplomas. If you're framing military stuff like medals and things, it's quite good for just making things look a little more special than a plain mount. So we're going to need 3 dimensions. We've got our main margin, so I'm going to draw on this one. So we're going to make that 50 millimeters. The next dimension is how much we're going to step the corner in, which I'm going to make it about 5 millimeters. I generally do it 3 is my default, but to make it easy to see, I'm going to use 5 millimeters. So this dimension is 55. And then we need to work out how long we want the corner to be. So I'm going to make that about 30 millimeters. So it's 55 plus 30, that is 85. And that gives us the 3 dimensions that we need. Everything we do, we're going to run off the stops on the machine, so you don't actually do any pencil marks or anything on the mount at all. So I always make myself a little crib sheet. We do a little drawing. That's the shape of the corner. So we've got 50, 55, 85. Then we need to draw a little table. So there's the map guide, which is this piece, and the stops, top and bottom stop. I'm not going to build a bias or an extra wide margin on this because there's a lot of stop changing to do, and what you don't want to be doing is adding in the complication of a bias. If you want a bias, work out the size of the mount that you want, take the widest margin and use that for all 4 sides. So it's slightly oversize. You then cut all the corners to the same dimension, and at the end you cut whatever the bias is. If you're using 5mm extra on the bottom, you add 5 to 3 sides, and at the end you go back and you cut 5mm off. It just keeps it very simple and reduces the chances of you making a mistake on the board. What you don't want to be doing is trying to add in a bias while you're doing all the other cutting for these corners. So the stops are always going to be the same. And what we start on the mat guide, we start with the biggest dimension, so 85, next 55, and at the bottom 50. The stops, we use the reverse. So we go 50, 55, 85. We have our mount board cut to size, face down, and using our little table, mat guide 85. Set that to 85, and the stops are 50. And 50. And basically what we'll be cutting is this little piece here. Another thing to keep in mind, if we're doing double or triple mounts, we want to keep the centre intact so we can use the centre as a slip. And also, if you're not careful, you end up, if you cross too many cuts, you end up with bits of board falling out. They get trapped underneath and they start imprinting. You're not cutting through because you've got bits of board caught underneath. So we want to try and keep the centre intact in one piece. So a lot of our cuts are just going to be called a skip cut, which is a little cut. We don't do start to stop. And what I think I'll do, as I'm cutting, I'll also mark it with a pencil so it's easier to see what I'm doing. Obviously, normally when you're cutting, you don't need to mark them with a pencil. So we've got the machine set to 85, 50, 50. And we're going to do these little notch cuts. So we put the board in face down, 50, 50. As you can see, the cut is only 5mm, and what we don't want to be doing is crossing these corners because we don't want this centerpiece falling out. So we're just going to do a skip cut. And for the skip cut, I come down to the bottom and then go forwards 10, 15mm, half an inch, and do another little skip cut. So I'll just mark where I've cut, and then it's a case of going around all four sides doing the same. As you go around, you can see where you've cut before. So what you don't want to be doing is crossing the cuts. There are the 4 cuts that I've done, and the other thing is to keep track that you have gone round 4 times. So we can move on to the next setting. So the mat guide is 55. And the stops are 55. So now we're cutting this corner out. So again, we don't do a full cut top to bottom, but we start in the corner. But what we want to do is make sure that we cross the cut that we've just made, so this corner will fall out. So again, double check 55, 55, 50. Good job, I checked. 55. And then we go around, and again, it's a case of doing all 4 cuts in, cut, cross the cut, and again, as long as we start before the cut into the corner. I will just mark that. Go around all 4. And the final cut. Mark that with a pencil so you can see. And there you can see we've cut the corners. And then the last cut, we'll join these up and the centre should come out. So we'll reset. The mat guide goes to 50. And the stops 85. Into the machine, and then check 50, 85, 85. And this is the last cut, so this one we do start to stop. So we go in, start, down, and again around 4 sides. And there we go. Just got a slight undercut on one. Again, very careful with the blade. Nick it into the corner. There we go. Put another one here. Careful not to push out because you end up with a very rough corner otherwise. And there we go. and the centre is still all in one piece, so there's no bits of board floating around. And if you want to do a double mount, you can put it back in and do your double mount.